welcome to my September/October reading review. I decided to combine these 2 months because I didn't get the chance to update you guys at the end of September, so we had this all in one big video. Let's jump straight into the reviews of these books. The first book I read was Percy Jackson and the Wrath of the Triple Goddess by Rick Riordan. This is a middle grade kind of fantasy, I suppose, fiction, and I gave it 5 stars. I'm gonna let you know off the bat that I am extremely biased when it comes to the Percy Jackson series. I love this series. These books were my whole childhood, so pretty much anything that comes out in the Percy Jackson universe I tend to really enjoy. This is technically the 7th book in the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series, continued on from Chalice of the Gods that came out last year, and then before that it was The Last Olympian, which came out years ago, like 10 plus years ago. In this kind of second wave of the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series, what's going on is Percy wants to get into university. And to get into university, he needs recommendation letters from gods and goddesses. It's really hard to get these recommendation letters. Percy has to go on quests in order to earn them from the gods, because for whatever reason, the gods are like, no, we won't. You saved the world a few times, we're still not gonna write you one now, so you just need to do all these like kind of random quests. So in the last book, it was Percy and friends had to get back the Chalice of the Gods. In this one, Percy is tasked with pet sitting. Hecate, who is the goddess of like magic, has her 2 pets, a hellhound and this kind of like ferret animal thing. I'll see if I remember to put up the actual word that it is. Percy is tasked with pet sitting these 2 animals over Halloween. And so this is a completely like Halloween book, which was very fun. As usual, there's just chaos. And we're back to having the main trio, Percy, Annabeth, and Grover, back together again, pet sitting and figuring stuff out when everything goes wrong, inevitably. That was actually something I really missed when I was reading the Heroes of Olympus series. I missed the original trio because they were the characters I fell in love with. So it's really nice to have them back all together and all the shenanigans they're up to. These books are aimed at middle schoolers, so I'm assuming that's ages like 11 to 13 is the range that I think that is. Obviously, the humor and everything is all very kid-friendly and geared towards children, but I still loved it. I still really liked it. Other people may not like it because, again, it's a book for kids. I did read it in one sitting. The words are quite big to allow children to read it. Anyone who was a fan of the original series will love this. It's the same style and everything as the original series. I still found a few bits quite funny, and I think just for the most part, I find Rick Riordan's humor quite funny. So I think I have an example here that I think was aimed at like older readers, but still not inappropriate. So this is a direct quote. "Ugh, the school thing again. I wanted to argue that school wouldn't mean much if we died for failing Hecate, but I knew better than to try. Annabeth took our graduation plans seriously. Death was no excuse. She was determined that we would finish high school together so we could go to California and do at least 4 more years of even harder school. Who had designed this system anyway? When do you get to chill on the beach and stop working? And don't tell me 67 unless you want to see a demigod cry." I found that very funny when I first came across it, and I also feel like kids won't feel how funny that is. They'll just kind of, oh yeah, next, keep going, gloss over it, and it stood out to me. But speaking about the humor in this book, there's a lot of like potty humor, which I don't actually like, but again, it's kind of expected when you think of the age range the book is for. All in all, I really do love this series, and I am so excited for Rick Riordan to keep writing more Percy adventures because I missed these adventures dearly. There's only so many times you can reread the original series. The next book I read was Wildfire by Hannah Grace. This is a romance book and I gave it 4.25 stars. So this is the second book in the Maple Hill series, also famously known as the Icebreaker series. I'm sure you've probably heard of Icebreaker because of TikTok. That's where I heard of it from. And this book we follow Russ and Aurora. Russ was in the last book. He's one of the hockey boys and just one of them, one of the teammates. I didn't really know which one he was going into this, but now I do. Now I can sort which one he is. But going in, I wasn't that sure. And then Aurora is fully new to us, I'm pretty sure. I don't think she was in the last book. If she was, she definitely didn't do much. The plot goes that Russ and Aurora hook up at like the end of semester party, and then Aurora sneaks out afterwards because she assumes that Russ kind of just wouldn't want anything to do with her beyond the hookup, and so she sneaks out, and that obviously creates tension between them because Russ was like, hey, why, what, where'd she go? Then that's that, they hook up, whatever. And they find out pretty quickly that they are both working at the same summer camp for the summer. And so they're kind of forced back together. We have them then becoming friends, or like kind of, or co-worker friends, and getting over that awkwardness, I suppose. And then obviously they start to find out more about each other, get to know each other, and come back together in a romantic sense too. So, and then that's really it. That's the plot. I enjoyed this sequel a good bit more than I enjoyed Icebreaker. The problems I had with Icebreaker were kind of fixed in this book. One critique I had of Icebreaker is that it is too long, like way too long for nothing going on. This book is indeed shorter. I believe it has 50 to 60 less pages. Perfect. There are, I'd say, a lot less sex scenes, which I preferred, but then of course some people won't like that, so beware. Something else I enjoyed about this is that, and this might be a tiny bit spoilery, but it won't ruin your experience of the book, so just be aware of that. One thing about romance books in general, like the formula of a romance book, is I really don't like third act breakups, because I usually feel like they are just shoved in there because there has to be one. It has to keep the couple, you know, interesting for them to break up last minute and you to be like, oh, are they gonna get back together? What's the story? Hannah Grace actually doesn't usually do a third act breakup. And I like that because it sometimes feels stupid when the couple just break up for no reason. I have an exception for Emily Henry because she writes it well. She does it well, and you're like, oh yeah, that's a fair enough reason to have a third act breakup. But a lot of the time, it's a stupid third act breakup. So thank you, Hannah Grace, for not wasting my time with stupid third act breakups. So that's another tick, tick, tick here for Wildfire. Something about this whole like subgenre of interconnected standalone hockey books is the amount of characters, and I do find it a bit hard to track who's who until I read their book. So the way I mentioned it earlier, like a few minutes ago, about this Russ is the main character, and I had no clue who Russ was when I started this. I was like, oh, okay, he's one of the hockey people. Couldn't tell you who is who beyond that. I remember the guy from the last book was Nate. The rest of the hockey players, I'm like, okay, they're there. So I find it a bit hard to track who's who until we get to their book. And I've found that in, can't remember the name of the series, but it's the L. Kennedy ones up there. Found it so hard to track which guy was which until I read their book. If you don't like that, there you go. But I mean, it's not too bad. It's not too bad. This is just a nice standard romance book. I liked it. I liked reading it while it was sunny. Like, it gave me real summer vibes. And I think I read it in September, October. And they're not traditionally summer months, but it's still warm out. So I liked reading in the sun and feeling the sun as I was reading this. Next, I read Two Can Play by Ali Hazelwood. This is a audiobook only romance book, and I gave it 3.75 stars. Let me explain. Two Can Play is more of just like a short story or a novella, I believe. The audiobook is literally only 4.5 hours long. There's not too much going on in there. Two Can Play follows Viola and Jessie, and they are both game designers. They work for two rival game studios and are therefore not on the best of terms. The two studios are chosen to develop a game based on a book, and this book is beloved by both Viola and Jessie. The people who want the game made want the best of both teams, so they're gonna have to work together, basically. Jessie is better at like the combat design, and Viola is better at like more narrative design. And so coming together is for the best interest of the book adaptation to make the video game good and the best it could be. It is known in the industry that the two studios do not like each other, so the game execs, the big important investors, force the two studios to go on this like work retreat, kind of like skiing, chalet vibe, to force them to kind of get along and to see if they could potentially work as a team. If not, neither of them will get the honor of designing the game. So that's the stakes there, and that's also this forced proximity that's pushed on both of them. They're constantly like overlapping and stuff. For example, their rooms are across from each other. They're constantly meeting and getting to know each other and starting to kind of understand the other person and what could have gone wrong in their working relationship, and then blah blah blah. The usual romance book stuff is happening. First off, I really loved reading about game designers. I thought that was like a fun hook, the Miss Hazelwood adding in that as her premise. You know, we've gotten chess player, we've gotten biologists, engineers, physicists. So I like her sticking with the really nerdy themes. If you are a frequent viewer or even have heard me speak at all about Ali Hazelwood, you will know that I love her books. So a 3.75 rating is quite low. Like every other book I've read of hers this year, I've given 5 stars. And it's usually like an automatic 5 stars. But something I want to note about Ali Hazelwood's short stories / novellas is that I never think they're long enough. I need more, and I need more time to fall in love with these characters and fall in love with their love. That is kind of like the downside of doing the shorter books that she comes out with every now and again. I feel like the characters don't get time to build up enough because you just have to keep going, especially it was a 4.5 hour audiobook. Like only so much could happen in that 4.5 hours. So because of that, it got a bit of a lower rating, but I knew that was going to be the case because I felt the exact same way about her trio of novellas that then she put into one book. What was it? Stuck With You, and then the 2 others. I can't remember the name. Below Zero and another one. I can't remember the names of the 3 of them. But again, I didn't think they were as good as her novel length books. I wasn't disappointed or anything. I knew exactly what was going to go down when I went into the book. On that same note, I feel like the circumstances and the climax of the story then was very rushed or like pushed together because there wasn't much time for it to slowly, gradually happen. So if you were going to go for a Hazelwood book, I obviously wouldn't recommend this one to start with. I'd choose other ones and then probably get to this one as like a bonus, almost like a mini book at the end of one of the other books if you miss her writing. That's the kind of vibe I get from Two Can Play. It was a good way to pass the time though. The next book I read was Twisted Lies by Anna Huang. This again is a romance book. I feel like I've been reading so many romance books recently, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. This is the final book in the Twisted series. Finally, I feel like I've been reading the Twisted series for about 10 years now, I haven't. It's been about a year. I like to pace out books in a series so I don't get fed up of the series unless I'm obsessed. Last year when I read ACOTAR, I had to read it all in one go because I loved it so much. Whereas these, I can kind of leave 6 months between them before I read another one, that kind of way. This was finally Stella's time to shine. Stella is the last of the 4 girls in this friend group. And this is again these interconnected standalone romance books, kind of like the hockey ones, but without hockey, thank God. It's only so much more hockey romance I can deal with at this stage. Yeah, Stella the last girl, and then Christian is the love interest. Stella is a style influencer. She is working to try get this deal with kind of like a fashion company house. She wants like an endorsement deal that they have kind of on offer. They're almost like testing people to see who would be the best endorsement deal. And she's going out for this as an influencer. She also wants to get to 1 million followers on Instagram, you know, that kind of stuff. And then we have Christian, who is the head of a security firm on kind of the outside. And then on the inside, he has other like nefarious businesses. And he seems to be a kind of hacker. So I always find it kind of funny throughout when it was like him hacking or using computers. I don't know, I find it very funny when authors write a character to be good at computer science topics, and I just find it very, just how it's written is always very funny and like stereotypical almost, like it's like, yep, I'm in. Moving the funds around. And I'm like, okay, sure. So Christian is a hacker by night. And he basically has developed software that can kind of like ruin people's lives, but he uses it against bad men. So he's morally grey. He's not that bad of a guy because he ruins men's lives who are assholes, is basically the thing. He will, like, for example, he will like hack into bad businessmen's accounts and send proof of their fraudulent activity to the police and be like, go get him. Or that he'll like drain companies' bank accounts and transfer it to like a charity, you know? This is the kind of hacker man he is, so it's kind of funny. So then we have Stella and Christian end up agreeing to fake date near the start of the book. For Stella wants more followers, Christian just kind of likes her, and just, I can't remember what his official justification is. I think it's for business, to do with security firm business, but realistically, internally, it's because he likes her. And it is dual point of view, so you do know that he likes her a lot. The thing that really kicks the relationship into gear though is that Stella has a stalker, and him being the head of a security firm, that kind of works out well. So she moves in with him to be safe, and yeah, it's just off from there. I personally thought this was one of the better books in the series, even though it is actually kind of massive for a romance book. 550, 552, yeah, it's 550s. So it's actually a pretty big book, but I don't know, maybe there was just more going on. And I have noticed that Huang's writing has gotten better as the series has gone on. So I found that interesting to see her improve with all of the books she was writing. And we do get a nice little epilogue of like a final where everyone's at the end of the book, and it's lovely to see all the characters happy and sorted in their relationships, and there's kids running around, people are married. Like a nice neat bow is tied on the top of this at the end of this book. I'm pretty happy with how it ended and how the series ended. I will potentially read more of Anna Huang's books. Don't know about the King of Blank books. It doesn't really intrigue me that much. Like, they're more the same, but maybe some other books. I'm on the fence about if I will or won't. The next book I read was Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. This is obviously a fantasy / romantasy, and I gave it 4.5 stars. This is the second book in the Fourth Wing series, or I believe is it the Empyrean? This picks up almost like instantly where the first one left off. And I won't spoil, I'll do my best not to say anything too spoilery, but what I will say is She goes back to college. She's in her like second year essentially of dragon riding college, and stuff's going on. That's almost all I can tell you about it without being spoilery. What did I like? What didn't I like? This book is too long. I think this is too long. There are 600 and something pages, and like that in fantasy isn't usually a problem, but this book gets very repetitive, and then in other places it just needed tuning up. And that's why I think it's too long. If there'd been more interesting content in the extra 100, 200 pages, perfect, fine. I like that, I'd like that. There wasn't. There was a lot of, we fly here, we do this, we fly here, we do that, but not in a fun way. The stuff they're doing after they fly here is not that gripping, and I think that was my main thing about the book in general, is that even when I finished reading on like a cliffhanger, I didn't care. I would put the book down for days and be like something big would happen, like Violet would be in awful trouble and I'd have to close the book because I'm going somewhere or doing something, and I wouldn't think about it again until I'd come back a week later and be like, open it up and be like, oh yeah, oh, Violet's in trouble, oops, and keep reading. I wasn't glued to the book. That being said, the book is quite easy to read and quite accessible fantasy. So I think that is a good thing, is that the really good thing about Fourth Wing series in general is that it is so fantasy newbie safe. Like, I think that's great because I like that kind of fantasy, and especially romantasy. I will say that there was like a little plot twist that I did see coming near the end, but then there were other plot twists I didn't see coming. So, you know, maybe I'm losing a knack for it. It didn't make it any worse, but I still was like, oh yeah, sure, that happened. And there were other parts of the book that I was like, oh, why is that happening now? Why is it not happening in the third book? Won't get into that and what I mean by that. Yeah, those are like my baseline thoughts on Iron Flame. Obviously I gave it a 4.5. So I did like it, and I will read the next book, and there's no question about that. I have to know what's going to happen. How does this get resolved? But I just think more time needs to have been taken between books. And I think that criticism is almost already being implemented, because the third book is coming out in January, whereas Fourth Wing and Iron Flame came out in the 1 year. They came out maybe 8 months apart, which feels so rushed to me. And then there's a good year between Iron Flame and Onyx Storm. Onyx Storm. I think that's the name of the next book. So I'm hoping Onyx Storm will be better. The final book I read was You Again by Kate Goldbeck. This is a romance book, and I gave it 4.5 out of 5. Another romance. So this book is actually a direct, not copy, but like it was inspired by the rom-com When Harry Met Sally, and I believe the personalities are potentially flipped, though I'm not fully sure. I saw When Harry Met Sally a long time ago, so I can't remember, but I liked this book. We have Ari and Josh. So Ari is a comedian and Josh is a chef, and this is set in New York, and I definitely got a feel that Kate Goldbeck is either from New York or knows New York very well, because I felt it as I was reading the book, if that makes sense. The setting felt really well set up, I will say that. And so what happens is Ari and Josh first meet and find out they're sleeping with the same woman. This book is told over the course of about 10 years, I want to say, where they keep running into each other. They both have like shared misery at one stage, and they come to each other and they start to this friendship, and they're just getting closer and closer and everything. I really liked the relationship. I've done a ranking romance tropes before, and I'm pretty sure I put Friends to Lovers like S tier. I do really enjoy Friends to Lover books. I think they're very sweet. I love that dynamic. So these start as almost like enemies, because they're like, oh, you're with her, I'm with her. No, you're not. No, you're not. And so it's kind of like they're combative at first, and then the next time they meet isn't good either. And then the next time they meet, they're getting a bit warmer towards each other. And then finally they meet again when they're both just at their lowest point. Then they start to get to know each other, and they're quite compatible in their misery. I'll say the reason it is a 4.5 out of 5 is the start. I found it kind of hard to get into. And I'm going to put that up to the fact that there is constant point of view changes. And I say that's to get us like acquainted with the characters, you know, it has to constantly switch. However, it doesn't say at the top the name of the person it's switching to, it shows an icon. So when the icon is a mic, that means it's swapping to Ari's point of view because she is a comedian. So I'll show you that here if you can see the microphone there. Oh, I can't see there. Yeah. And then when it's a spatula, it's back to Josh's point of view. So confusing at first because I didn't really notice. I feel like it just felt like a line break, and then suddenly it was you're in someone else's head completely. So yeah, I didn't like that much, and you were swapping over so often because again, you were getting to know the characters, and I wasn't a fan of that. And not just because it was confusing, but because it kind of disrupted your flow when you were in reading. So I felt like I was being yanked from head to head across the room as they were bantering away. Wasn't a fan of that. But then when you get into it, when they're becoming friends, it settles and it makes more sense, and they're in the same room, but you want to know what the other is thinking. Something I'll also say is that these characters are potentially not everyone's cup of tea. They are heavily flawed, the pair of them. Ari has massive like commitment issues. She's like really bad at relationships, has real problem with kind of being left. That's her whole thing. And Josh is like a control freak and needs everything his way, or he kind of starts to lose control a little bit, and he does actually get quite mad sometimes. And I can see why that would turn some people off, I suppose. But that being said, I like it. These are two human beings. I want to read about complex human beings, not two fairy princesses, you know? Some people find them incredibly unlikable and hate the book for it, which just is not me. It wouldn't be me. And some of their choices did annoy me, of course. I was like, oh God. But I could still kind of understand who they were as characters and why they may have made those choices. I think Ari needed a bit more backstory as to why she had these commitment issues. It was kind of alluded at a little bit, but we never actually got full like background on things, like what maybe even specific incidents from her past. We didn't really get any. We got a bit of allusions through just like what she said, but she never actually had like a deep conversation about it, which would probably not go amiss in this kind of book. So that was kind of the one thing. But all in all, I did really enjoy this. And by the end, I was really rooting for them. And I was like, please, please, you're meant to be. So I like it. I really liked it. And I really recommend it. I purposely read this in October because of the autumn vibes. I do recommend it during autumn. It just does. It's kind of cozy in that way. That's all of the reviews. As usual, I'm now going to pick a book from my TBR jar. It says Aristotle and Dante 2. So this is a book that's on the top of my shelf, so I won't grab it now. But it is the Aristotle and Dante, is it something, The Secrets of the Universe? Or something about water, I don't know, but it's the second Aristotle and Dante. So that is on my list for this month. That's the video. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, here's another one that YouTube recommends that you may like. And I will see you next time.